Oh, the little countdown. I love the little countdown on our intro there. Don't you guys love that? 10, 9. It's so theatrical and over the top. What's going on, friends? How are you? I need to change. I want to change a thing on my settings, but I don't. I'm not gonna do it. Okay, it looks like I have a little delay. Are you hi, Gretchen? Are you seeing a little delay, friends? Can you let me know in the chat? Leslie, are you seeing a delay? Because I'm seeing a delay. I'm saying words with my mouth, but the sounds are coming out differently. You guys have a delay or no? Yes, a little. Okay. Rahima is here. Salam alaikum. Yes, a little delay. Ugh, this freaking delay happens every time we get on. I'm not sure what to make of it. Technology being a little bitch. Okay, one second. Let me close a couple things and see if that helps in any way. Mm-mm-mm. All right, how about now? Oh, that seems better, sort of. This is very surreal. Okay, I'm just gonna not watch myself talk. Please, you guys, message me in the shitty chat thing if you're unable to track what I'm saying because the delay is so crazy. Let's jump into this topic because I'm really interested in it. I don't know if I can stand having my background blurred anymore though, so I'm gonna try to change it because it makes me, I'm not liking this background, you guys. I can't even talk to you because I can't even focus with the blur in the background. Done. I fixed it. Look at me doing technology like some kind of modern person. My hair is insane today. Can we just enjoy? It's like Farrah Fawcett over here and then just like a sad waterfall, just like an old lady took a pee on this side of my life and just straight down. We're going with, I kind of like it. It speaks to the duality of reality. You know what I mean? Like things are one thing or they're not. And that's what my hair is reminding us all of today. And here's a lovely segue into the topic. So, in this reality, everything in human existence and in the human heart and in a human life is seeking unification. It's seeking oneness. Things that are fragmented want to become whole. What happens, however, for every human being who exists and comes into a human body and has a childhood and has friends and family and dates people and doesn't date people is fragmentation occurs. All trauma, literally all trauma, is or creates fragmentation in the psyche, the body, the mind, the heart, the spirit, etc. Depending on what the trauma is, different kinds of fragmentation occur. So, for example, let's say you had a surgery recently. Somebody might know what I'm talking about. If you had a surgery recently, sometimes the actual cutting of the tissue, hi, Michelle, whoever you are, good to see you. Sometimes the cutting of the tissue of your skin will have to fuse back together after the surgery. And then that will leave sometimes a scar, not always. But scar tissue is literally a fragmentation of the surface of the skin, meaning the skin happens and then there's the scar where there's a break in the sort of smooth field of the what would otherwise be just the skin. So now there's a fragmentation there. There are types of physical therapy and energetic healing techniques that work to sort of like reattach the two sides of a scar. So anywhere you have on your body a scar, there are people who believe that your meridians are messed with. All different kinds of fragmentation occurs as a result of the simple thing of scarring. I mean, I have a scar here, I have a scar on my knee, I have a scar over here, I got scars all over the place. So this is not to make people, don't panic if you have scars. It's just one example of, on the physical level, what I'm talking about when I talk about fragmentation. Now, let's say you had emotional trauma as a child, like most human beings do. Emotional trauma as a child and physical trauma as a child and psychological trauma in childhood cause within the human heart and the human psyche internal fragmentation. So let's say there's a sensitive part of you who is very emotional when you're a child, and your mom and dad shame that part of you for being emotional. And they say to you, why do you have so many feelings? And they criticize and judge you for being emotional. So what you learn to do is, okay, the only way I get love and attention and care is to be very strong and very tough and very guarded. So I'm going to fragment off that sensitive emotional part of me and exile it into a different part of my body mind somewhere. I'm going to push it down into my shadow self. I'm going to hide it in my back. I'm going to store it in the back of my neck. We don't obviously make these decisions consciously, but we make them and they occur. Then, of course, the energy of that fragmented part of self sits somewhere in the background of your life for a long, long time, remaining exiled and not integrated or part of the wholeness of the entirety of you, your body, mind, your heart, your spirit, the entirety of you, the adult you. This part is exiled or cut off or fragmented away. So when we're doing healing work, therapeutic work, somatic work, whatever kind of healing work you're doing, emotionally, psychologically, or otherwise, we are reintegrating fragmented parts of ourselves. This is also what's happening, by the way, with everyone you've ever been attracted to in your life. When you are attracted to something or someone from the outside of your body, here comes the person that you're attracted to, that person and the attraction you feel to them, really the attraction you feel to them is an indication that there is a fragmentation for you internally somewhere. It's usually we're attracted to the people who have the qualities that we have disowned in ourselves. I'm going to say that again. Usually we are attracted to people who have qualities that we have on one level or another disowned, judged, exiled, fragmented away from inside of ourselves. So people who you're attracted to show up so that you will reintegrate that aspect of yourself that that person is mirroring. That's literally why you date people. You date people and you sleep with people and you marry people who have something that you have separated away from inside yourself. So if you're aware of this fact, you can start to work with these energies consciously. Okay, I'm going to say more about the attraction thing in a minute. Putting a pin in that. Let's talk about trauma healing and let's talk about this thing that happens that spiritual people and conscious people and psychological circles talk about, which is, everything that's happening in your reality is, what people will say is you create your reality, right? Everything that's in your reality is there because you pulled it to you. And so there gets to be this really judgy, blamey way. And we've talked about this here before and in my classes before, but we're going to deep dive this a little bit. There gets to be this way that we hold that idea very critically of ourselves. We hold it like, well, if I weren't such a fuck up loser, I wouldn't be attracting all these toxic men, say. Or if I weren't such a fuck up loser, I wouldn't be attracting or creating all this like emptiness in my bank account. Or if I weren't such a fuck up loser or such a trauma survivor, victim, fuck up asshole, whatever your judgment, your judgments are of yourself. If I weren't so bad and wrong, essentially, I wouldn't be attracting financial stress. Okay. In fact, what's going on is that there is something going on inside of you that is pulling to you the experience you're having. However, what we are tasked with on the healing path, should you choose to pursue integration, meaning a sense of wholeness and cohesion inside yourself, a sense of internal peace, and a life that works in 3D reality in a functional, practical, actual 3D way that isn't just an abstract spiritual notion that some woo-woo person taught you that you're now trying to live into and wondering, why can't I manifest my vision board? Because you've got something going on in your nervous system, your psychology, your heart, your body, your mind, your soul, your spirit, consciously or unconsciously, somewhere there's something going on that is a match to what you are experiencing. Okay, but what people do with that is go to judgment about it. I'm bad and wrong because I am creating this reality. A more useful approach would be to get curious about what we are each carrying inside of ourselves that is in fact pulling this towards ourselves, rather than getting judgmental about what inside of ourselves is pulling this toward ourselves. Okay, so I'll give you some specific examples of what I'm talking about here. Healing has everything to do with your relationship to the injury. How you relate to the fact that you have a psychological, emotional, spiritual wound that needs your attention, your love and attention. By the way, that's what healing is we're bringing love and attention to Squeezle the dog as she bails out of this talk today. We're bringing love and attention to the wounded parts of ourselves, as opposed to keeping those wounded parts in exile, aka far away from the parts of us that even know how to give love and attention, love and care. So here's an example. I've talked about this a fair amount on here. When I was in my 20s, this is what happened in my dating life. It's a great way to talk about this. Are you going to come back over here? These people need you. Okay, the queen would like to be let out. Please bear with me. Come on, out you go. We must give the queen what the queen desires. Okay, so I went through, because I had learned about these ideas like during a time when I still was carrying a ton of trauma, what I decided to do was just watch the ways that my history and my trauma were being reflected to me in the people I was attracted to. And so here's what I was aware of it. I was consciously watching the patterns that showed up. Now she wants to get back in the room. In my dating life. Okay, she's free. So let me show you how it went. Because I was aware of this concept, I started to be curious about it rather than just see what people do when they judge themselves for their trauma patterns is then they have an excuse to not work on the trauma pattern. If I can say like, oh my God, I'm so fucked up. I can't believe I'm so fucked up that I'm attracting all these alcoholics. I used to attract drug addicts and alcoholics all the fucking time. And if I had just judged myself for it, then what I would have done is just made up a reason to just not deal with it. I would have been saying like, well, that's fucked up. So I'm going to push that aside and just focus on positive men. And then I would never have integrated what I needed to integrate because I would have had a built-in excuse. That thing about me that is attracting those people is bad and wrong. Therefore, I'm not going to look at it. I'm going to further exile it inside my psyche. What I did, because I had already seen by a pretty young age that whenever you exile something that's already repressed, it just fucks with you worse from around the back. Anything you repress, what we resist persists. Okay. Anything that's already repressed, when you repress it more or judge it, because judgment represses things, that's what it does. It just sneaks out behind you like this and starts to fuck with you from over here, usually through negative self-talk, self-harm behaviors, low self-esteem, making choices that suck and don't build your future, making choices that don't match what you say you want. It can happen much more unconsciously like that and become a self-sabotaging unconscious pattern of overeating or alcohol consumption or sleeping with everyone you meet or whatever it might be in your case. Okay. But the point being, everything you repress becomes a thing that is going to affect you from behind you anyway. It's going to drive the bus of your life from the back row, even when you charmingly think you're in charge. You're not. Everything you've repressed is currently present moment running your life from behind the scenes. That is why you're quote, quote, attracting to your life everything you don't want. Because everything you don't want, you've repressed and it's operating from behind you and pulling to you more of it. Okay, so coming back to the example of using me as to see this pattern in a way that I hope is helpful. First, I dated the most toxic form of my dad's addiction. I was raised by a man who is a very high functioning alcoholic. So he was like a CEO he was a big power guy, very smart, very intelligent, very well educated, and deeply alcoholic. Those two things can coexist. So what I did, I watched my psyche do. It wasn't like consciously in my mind I chose this. It would just happen. Like I would meet a man, find him attractive, and then like fall in love with him way too fast, have no idea who he really is, fall right away in love. And then because that part of me I was desperately seeking my dad's love, didn't get a lot of it because he was busy loving his addiction. That's how that goes, by the way. So I would fall right in love without knowing them very well at all. And then I would find out miraculously 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks into it that he was like deeply addicted to heroin or cocaine or alcohol or all kinds of crazy shit, like deep, intense, addicted men. So then I saw it and I understood with my mind what the therapy people had been telling me, which is what I'm telling you today, which is that that which we are drawn to or attracted to is always representative of something inside of ourselves that needs attention. So what I realized was, ew, somebody's putting my hot photo here. And what a weird, if you're like a porn guy and your taggy thing is girls69.xyz, why would you come to this talk? Does my audience seem like the kind of people that want to see my hot photo here? Leslie, can we ban this idiot from this fucking situation, please? I don't know if you're there right now, Leslie, but I don't, whoever that is, let's delete them. You can go bye bye, girls 69. Weird. Also, like, I guess it's probably a bot because I'm like, what porn guy comes to the conscious chit chat to be like, tits? Okay, anyway, where was I? The point being, because I believed the people who were teaching me when they told me everything that comes to you is a reflection of something inside of you, what I had to do was work with the part of me that was deeply addicted. I was addicted to food. I had been addicted to alcohol and weed, but I'd been sober for a long time at this point when I started to see this pattern very clearly. So my thing was food, power, status, belonging, like being liked, really, and then sex and love. I had like real serious sex and love addiction for a long time in my 20s. And that just was like this powerful pull to just be in love all the time and have the love feeling and get the attention of the attractive man or have the sex and distract him from all my trauma, but distract him with all the sexiness, right? So when I saw all the addiction showing up in my reality, I had to face my addictions. So I did. I sat into the parts of me that were acting out sexually, romantically, nutritionally, financially, and so on. And for me, because I use divine light transmission as a form of healing, or as the most effective form for my body, I developed a relationship with the divine, okay? And I was able to bring the light of conscious love into all the parts of me that were deeply addicted to approval, status, money, being liked, being pretty, being thin, whatever it might be. And then here's what happened. I finished that. I got through it. Like it's not there anymore. Then I started to notice every man I was dating was not addicted, but totally emotionally unavailable and not very interested in me personally. It was almost like the more disinterested they were in me, the more interested I was in them. Thank you, Leslie, for removing that. I appreciate it. So I started to go, okay, all of these disinterested men are showing up, and I'm only interested in them. This is something in me that is calling this to it. What is it? So then I was able to analyze a little bit with my mind without judging myself. Again, if I had just said, like, oh my God, I'm so fucked up for doing that. If we judge ourselves, then we just repress the pattern further and try to make other choices. And then we keep going through life like this. I'm making new choices. I'm making new choices. This is why positive thinking alone doesn't fucking do anything for you. If you just positively reframe and make a new choice, that's helpful, but it hasn't changed this energy. How do I do this? This energy back here. I just judged it and repressed it. It's still in there. So it's still going to try to make choices from the background. This is why people find a good husband and then cheat, because they never processed this stuff through. Or you find a good person and then you just like pull away from them emotionally or treat them terribly or whatever. It's because you haven't actually dealt with the energy of the original problem that called that pattern to you. Okay, so then let's go back to my example. So I noticed, wow, all these emotionally unavailable people are showing up. What the hell is that about? Then I had to confront the fact that both of my parents were emotionally unavailable. So there was a young part of me that was desperately looking to get the emotionally unavailable people to love me. If only the emotionally unavailable people would love me, then I would feel okay. So I sat with her. She was an aspect of me. This is called parts work. She had to be reintegrated into my adult self. When you have to understand, when parts that have been exiled because for their pain and suffering, that's why we exile parts of ourselves. When they've been exiled, when they reintegrate, all of a sudden, that person who was very attractive to you because they were emotionally unavailable becomes instantly unattractive. You'll just be like, ew, they're not available at all. I don't want anything to do with that. Now, in my case, there was more than one reason why I was attracting emotionally unavailable people. One, I was trying to get mommy and daddy. I was unconsciously, not this is not a thing we do in the conscious mind. A young exiled part of me was unconsciously trying to grab for mom and dad's love because they were both emotionally unavailable when I was a kid. But so I healed that, reintegrated that part, saw the pattern, and was able to make new choices around the pattern instead of just making the same fucking choice over and over again. But additionally, it didn't quite fully go away right away when I dealt with that piece. I had to look at another piece, which was my own emotional unavailability. I was not emotionally available to myself. I realized there were tons of feelings and emotions that I would have in a given day that were deemed by my psychology and my conscious mind as illegal, bad, wrong, stupid, judgeable, lame. Mom won't love you if you do those feelings. Dad won't love you if you do those feelings. So those feelings were not allowed inside of me. So I was cut off emotionally from myself. So I was being given emotionally unavailable men and I was attracted to them. People always get so upset in my healing classes. Why am I attracted to the very thing that doesn't work? And he seemed so available in the beginning. That's how amazing. That is the power of the magic of the unconscious mind. We unconsciously, we don't do it with our minds. You see a pretty looking man and you go, pick him. You have no idea that unconsciously from the limbic brain, this is science, not woo woo, okay? You are unconsciously pulling to you the very thing you don't want until you can face and see and understand what that thing you don't want is and what's happening inside of you that makes you want it. Let's take a sip of tea. Okay. So then I was able to see, okay, I'm emotionally unavailable to people, other people, and to myself. So then that was a huge undertaking to figure out, like, why am I so afraid of it? And what would happen if I were more available? And can I open my heart? And can I let people in? And I had to go to lots of therapy and do lots of relational trauma healing and lots of divine light healing and lots of parts work just to start in on my own emotional unavailability. Okay, now watch this shit get real fancy and insane. Once I finished that process in the biggest, most obvious ways that it needed to be dealt with, next came the weirdest thing that I never saw coming in a million years. I dated a few men in a row who were my mother. Now, my mother is my same gender and or gender presenting, however we want to frame that. We're both cisgendered female women, human mammals, bipedal on Earth. I never would have thought in my logic mind that I would be attracted to men who would carry the traits of my mother, because my mother is not the object of sexual attraction. Like if we're going Freudian or um, Oedipalian, we're thinking about Oedipus or Freud. You don't think of the same sex parent if you happen to be a straight person. We don't think of our same-sex parent as being someone we would draw in as a partner. But I started to date my mother. Sure as shit, I'm telling you, I would get 3 months in and be like, this motherfucker behaves like my goddamn mom. So it was like I had to go through all the layers of the parts of me I had exiled by being raised by my dad. And then I got to all the parts of me that I exiled by being raised by my mom. So I had to reintegrate all the parts of me that I was either in resistance to, or that I was repressing, or that I really wanted to step into, but believed I couldn't. Now, here's another, let's talk about that nuance. Another reason things show up in the external reality that you're attracted to, okay, is because those energies exist in you and you want those qualities. Sometimes we attract things because we want them. In other words, One of my mother's positive qualities is she's a powerful woman. She's very strong, outspoken, powerful leader type. Now, this was always in me to be a strong, outspoken, powerful leader type myself, but I had repressed that about myself. I believed at this time when I was dating these men, the only way to be a likable, lovable person was to turn myself into some kind of follower, softy, more feminine, more sweet, more light energy girl, because these are the projections that our culture has about what women are supposed to be. So when I started to see that I was calling these men in who had a toxic form of potency, that was exactly what my mother did. Is she used her potency to toxically manipulate people, or she could, not always, specifically me. That was our dynamic a lot. Sometimes she used her potency very effectively and very brilliantly. She's a smart, powerful leader type, right? But it got used against me in ways that were really not okay with me. So in my little psyche, I conflated power with toxic manipulation. So what I decided unconsciously was I will not be powerful. Because if I'm powerful, I'm going to do toxic shit that, like, my perception of what she did. So I was like, no power for me. And that took me a good 5, 6, 7 years of consciously working with it in therapy to really disentangle that and go, hold on. This is actually an aspect of this woman who raised me, this vibration that I want. I want to own my potency. I want to be as strong and as big energetically as I am. So I'm running into these men who have the twisted version of what I want so that I can come to understand the aspect of that twist that is correct for me and disentangle these two energies that I had entangled with one another. I'll tell you another thing. I kept getting jobs without trying. I mean, I would not look for these jobs. People would offer me jobs teaching people that were like big narcissistic CEO types. I was teaching them, like big corporate giants, and I'm teaching them public speaking or improv skills for business or whatever it was I was teaching. And I kept running into these people I was teaching who were like exactly like her, sort of narcissistically, sometimes a little sociopathically, abusively, unconsciously mean and controlling, but very powerful and very successful. And so my first reaction to those people was like, ugh, I hate them, fuck them. I wish they weren't in my class. Let me go gossip with my friends about how annoying these people are. But I knew this teaching about everything that comes in is a reflection of something going on inside. So I got curious instead of getting judgmental. So I had to ask myself, what is this a reflection of? And in that case, it was much more complex because it was a reflection of many, many things. One, it was a reflection of the power I was wanting to embody, but that I was disowning in myself. So I had to start practicing in 3D reality, owning my power. Two, it was a reflection of that twist that was blended into power. So I had to learn, when was I doing the twist, the manipulative twist that power can facilitate one having. And boy, howdy, was I. I was just as good at manipulating and controlling people from an egoically twisted, injured, narcissistically wounded place as she was, because she instilled it in me. Of course I was. Three, it was showing me just, I had like legit terror of standing up to those people. I felt terrified. I've always been a good actor, so I could pretend when I was teaching them that I wasn't afraid of them and say the right words and do the right behaviors. Terror inside. What I realized was it was that young part of me who was terrified of that twist in my mother's potency field. So when I faced the terror of these CEOs that were in my classes and dissolved it, so it reintegrated through my spinal column, all of a sudden I wasn't that afraid of them anymore. They would do their narcissistic words and I'd be like, huh, what a sad, injured man. Okay, well, I'll give him what I have or not. It just, there was no charge on it anymore. And then I was able to be in those classes and not be so triggered by those people and their twisted behavior. Everything that shows up in our realities is a reflection of something going on inside, but it is not something judgeable. And it is not always the most obvious thing that you think it might be. So notice in this case, when I started to, let's use the example of when I started to date my mother, metaphorically speaking, I was dating like this emotionally manipulative victim-y energy that I was very confused by. And then I realized, oh, I have disowned any needy parts of myself. I'm not allowed to be needy. So I had total judgment of the men in my life who had any feelings or any needs because I was not allowed to have needs as a kid. At least that was my perception. That's what my psyche did and said, and how my psyche responded to the reality I was in as a child. It learned you don't get the kudos in life from being needy, you get them from being strong and powerful. So, on some level, unconsciously, I had decided being needy is wrong. So, I was dating these needy ass men so that I could process my judgment of need. Wow, what a miracle that was. So in that case, that's what that was about. Now, there were other pieces. Then I started to date my mom in other forms, the manipulative control part. Okay, I had to own that. Then I realized I don't want any part of that in a partner. Sometimes my clients will say to me, how can I get mad at my husband or my wife for being this way when I'm this way too? And I say, that is a good question. The answer is if you integrate the parts of yourself that you don't like in them, you will have less of a charge around them being that way. And once you integrate that part, you will have more clarity about whether this person is actually somebody you're compatible with. You see, people conflate attraction with compatibility. Compatibility and attraction are not the same. I have been attracted, you guys, to everyone. Name a kind of person, and I've been attracted to them. A lot. Like not in a calm, gentle, kind of sort of way. In an intense, big, powerful, moisture-inducing way. That is because I have had so many parts of self to reintegrate that everything was a reflection for me. Every person I met, I was attracted. I fell in love every 20 minutes when I was younger. This is what we call sex and love addiction. It was in part because of my sexual abuse trauma, which let's talk about that in a second, but in part because I needed to see all these reflections of the parts of myself that were unintegrated. Now, this is perfect. We'll talk about trauma for a second. So I'm going to review a few things and then bring trauma more into the conversation. Sometimes the universe is showing you something because it's an aspect of yourself that you have repressed that needs to be integrated. Sometimes the universe brings you something because it's an aspect of yourself that is positive that you've repressed. So I should go back. A negative aspect of self that you've repressed, or a positive aspect of self that you've repressed, or judged, or exiled, or said to yourself is wrong and bad and therefore shouldn't exist. Other times, the universe shows you a thing because it's reflecting to you the trauma you're carrying in your nervous system, your mind, your body, your heart, your being, your soul, your spirit, wherever your trauma might live. So sometimes you get to see your own, so in the case of sexual abuse trauma, trigger warning, trigger warning, trigger warning. Now I gotta let Squeezle back. Please bear with me. I need an assistant to help me with the dog. You know what we need to do? Here's the solution. I need to get Squeezle her own church. Don't you think? Squeezle church once a week, Saturday morning. Do you want to have a church of your own? She's like, I don't know. I just want steak. Anyway, so another thing the universe will mirror to you and show to you is energies that match the most toxic forms of your trauma. So sexual abuse trauma is a kind of, particularly when it happens at a very young age for children. You're right, Jamie. I need a doggy door on the office door. Some people have doggy doors to the outside, not us. We're going to have a doggy door to the hall. So if you have sexual abuse trauma, for example, trigger warning, trigger warning, trigger warning, we're going to talk about sexual abuse trauma. Please tune out right now or turn the thing off if you can't handle that. I respect that. Don't worry. Don't judge yourself for that. If you need to walk away, walk away. But for anybody who's up for hearing about this, when sexual abuse happens to a child, like a young child, it's so impossible to process and integrate the incident because a child is not sexually developed. So a child doesn't even have a frame of reference for what sexual energy is. So it's so incredibly overwhelming to the nervous system of a child, because imagine introducing into a child's system an energy that not only penetrates their auric field and their body, but introduces an entirely new energy, like an alien form that they've never felt or seen or have any reference for, and also that they suddenly feel sudden shame about, and they have no idea why. So that is so flooding of the nervous system and overwhelming for the systems of a body and a psyche, that that energy of the actual abuse itself has to be repressed. It has to be encased in a hard shell of sorts somewhere in the spinal column or the belly or the heart or the genitals or the back of the neck or the throat, wherever it needs to get lodged, so that later, when you are a healthier, stronger adult, I shouldn't say healthier, but when you're an adult and you have the resources and the time and the energy to process and integrate that energy, you can face it now. Sexual abuse energy, you guys, does not go away if you just stop thinking about it. Or if you just go like, yeah, well, anyway, I'm going to think positively and move forward. It doesn't go away. And it creates repeated patterns of sexual trauma until you process it. What does process it mean? It means you have to go into that part that is hardened, that energy that got stuck, and unfortunately, you got to move that shit out. You've got to face the frozen terror of it, let it shake in your system until it dissipates, and you can do that however you like. EMDR, EFT, energy healing, somatic therapy, talk therapy, shock therapy, whatever works for you. Speaking of which, that makes me think, if any of that sounds good to you, my Friday healing class starts this week again. We start Friday. I've got room for one or maybe two people in that class. I don't want it to be too big, this one, because we're going to do EMDR and EFT and divine light healing. So if you have some sticky, troublesome trauma that you're not yet able to dissipate out of your system, this is a good class to join, because we're going to attack the trauma from many different levels using many different tools. So you'll leave this class with many tools for dissipating trauma. Okay, so yes, so back to the narrative. I started to, all the sexual trauma stuff started to show up for me in the form of very sexually traumatized or traumatizing men, just one after the other in a row. So I went, okay, fine. I guess I have to find the sexual abuse trauma energy in my body and process it. So I did. And then a very weird thing started to happen for me. I started to attract loving, centered, healthy men who were very kind and available and generous and good looking and sweet. And I was very confused. Like, what is happening? First of all, the toxic dudes went away. They don't even see me. I walk in a room, I don't exist to them. Then the emotionally unavailable dudes, I don't even know who they are. I don't even run into those people. I don't even know how to have a conversation. I don't even see them. They don't show up in my field. I'm not exaggerating. They don't exist in my world. Okay. All of a sudden, all these available motherfuckers, good looking, kind, had nice moms, available dudes showing up. And I was just like, what is this now? So what came up for me personally in that space was like, I don't do this. I'm not a lady who they can't. Why would they? Not me. I'm the fucked up lady who does the fucked up stuff. What is this? So then I had to heal that piece and integrate the part of me that had identified as my trauma and with my patterns. There's a very deep layer by layer by layer unfurling of when you've had really deep trauma to the nervous system. It takes time to really disentangle your identification mentally with the traumatized body of you. First, you can dissolve and reintegrate the traumatized body so you're not carrying all of it, but that takes like a lifetime. And in the meantime, we have to practice de-identifying from the mind with the traumatic behaviors so that when healthy, attractive, loving humans show up in our field, we go, maybe I could have that. Could I have that? Maybe I could. Now you might wonder, well, why didn't it work? Or like, what happened then? Well, what's happening in my reality, and I'm just using me as an example because I'm here and we're all listening to me talk. I'm a good example anyway, because I've dealt with so many things inside myself and there's more to go. So far, the healthy, loving, attractive males I've attracted have not been a vibrational match all the way through me, like down and through. So lately, I'm sitting into this part where it's like in the second chakra in a very subtle way. I've had some kind of idea unconsciously that I have to be with someone who is totally, it's been a projection. The latest work I've been doing relationally has had to do with projecting the idea that I have to be like, I've been dating sweet, soft men who are like too sweet and too soft. So I lose the attraction. Like there's no attraction is created through friction and duality. So if you have no tension, no friction, no duality, the attraction, it's difficult to maintain it. That's a whole other topic we'll do another time. But the attraction has died for me a few times in a row with people because I was pulling people in who are so nice that they had disowned their own power. And that's because I've been working through my own like stuff about niceness and power, right? So now I'm in a place where it's like, okay, I'm ready for a powerful motherfucker who's also kind. What the hell does that look like? I have no idea, but we're going to find out because now I would argue I am a vibrational match for that. And we will find out if what that does in my field is help me integrate something new so that I then move to the next thing, or is it such a good match that it just can stick around? Now, the sticking around happens when there's compatibility, not just attraction. Because remember, attraction and compatibility, not the same thing. You can be attracted to all kinds of people that you are not compatible with. Compatible means you have enough stuff in common and you like to do enough of the same stuff and you have the same priorities and you want to go the same places in life so you can travel together heading toward the things that you both want. That's compatibility. Very different from attraction. So don't be fooled just because you're attracted to someone or something that means that you're compatible. You might be, you might not be. You're going to have to date them to find out. Now, let's come back to talking about not humans in dating contexts, but like other shit. Is that articulate? Other shit? Here's what I mean. Remember, I started this talk today by saying everything in the outer reality that comes into your field is a reflection of something going on inside of you. That includes everything. The screen of reality is literally a movie screen that is reflecting you to you. People sometimes like to give spiritual people like myself a hard time, and they think with this idea because they'll say, "Oh, okay, all of reality is all about you, Katie. Like, oh, that leaf fell from that tree because of something in your past. What if it's just a freaking leaf that fell from a tree?" You know what I mean? To which I say, okay, I understand that you are afraid. You, person who is judging me, are afraid of looking at the possibility that everything in your reality might be on a screen that is reflecting to you everything you need to see about your own inner reality. So because you're afraid of that idea, you got to call me self-centered and what's that word I want? Snowflake, self-centered, narcissist, because I'm aware of how reality works. Now, you can, of course, one could use this life as a screen reflecting to you what you need to see or need to know or need to integrate or need to process. You can totally use that narcissistically if you have narcissistic wounding that drives your life choices and your awarenesses. I happen to be relatively healthy with my narcissism at this point, and so I know when reality is showing me something I have to work with, and it's all the fucking time. And that's true for all of us. Usually what happens for most people, however, is you are deadened to the ability within yourself to interpret the meaning of the symbols that are coming in. Everything, including the weather, is a reflection of something going on. Everything, everything, everything. I'm going to give you a specific example. I'll tell you two of the craziest ones. Now, because I'm so like into all the spiritual light, and I have brought a lot of it into my body and been a vehicle for giving it to people for a long time now. I mean, I spend a lot of time with the divine light. high frequencies of it. I don't always want to, let me tell you what, but I do. The speed at which the universe is reflecting things to me is very fast, and my understanding of what it's reflecting is quite quick. In fact, I have an ability that I've developed over years where I can ask, "Hey, consciousness, what are you showing me with this?" So here's two stories of crazy versions of this. One is, and what I'm saying about that, by the way, is you have this ability within yourself too. All you need to do is develop it and ask the universe questions and start to learn, how does the universe respond to my questions? How do I hear answers, as it were, or guidance or awareness from the universe in my body, mind, organism? One time I led a Christ light retreat. Now, if you know anything about me, I'm not a religious lady. I'm deeply spiritual and I'm a mystic, but that's different from religion. I'm not interested in the religious figures and the dogma of religions. I am interested in the narratives that are taught there as metaphors. I enjoy that very much. However, the Christ light is a particular frequency of divine light. So I led a retreat that was 4 or 5 days long. I can't remember now, where I spent the entire retreat transmitting Christ light for these people. And I'm talking about hours and hours and hours a day. When I walked out of that Christ light retreat, I was so high on the light of the Christ that I ended up this driving from Massachusetts back to Colorado at the time. Is that right? Yeah, Massachusetts, Colorado. The entire time I drove back, this is such a surreal story. I feel like I need a full hour to talk about just this story, but I'm going to get into it. I'll give you the short version. Literally, every sign I would see on the road, I was taken backwards in time through my own life, through the signs on the road. In other words, I'm trying to remember the order it went in. It was like I'd be driving and listening to music or something, and then I would notice a sign and it would be 305, the area code of my childhood home. And I'd be like, that's weird, 305. Huh, childhood home, whatever. Then I'd keep driving. And I would forget about road signs or anything. Then I'd look down at the clock or something, and it would say, like, the letters would form, like it would be like 606, but it would look like Bob, which is my dad's name. And then I'd be like, that's weird. That's my dad. Okay. Anyway, then time would go by and I'd look over here and there'd be a sign that said, exit here for the DAST Museum of Art, DASTE, which was the last name of my high school boyfriend. And I'm telling you, the entire drive went like that. I was in such an expanded state. My whole being was just blissed out and expanded into the Christ consciousness, that I was seeing through time and space very clearly and very easily. And I was being taken on a journey from like the beginning of everything that ever happened to me up to the present moment. And when I stopped in the hotel that I stopped in on that day of that drive, it had brought me back to present time. So it would like started with childhood, went through high school, went through adult college, adulthood, the job last week, and then today. And there were like boyfriends' names and dad and locations of vacations we had taken. It happened so transparently and loudly that I started to narrate it to a couple friends of mine while it was happening. I was like, then I saw Brian Dast's last name, and then I saw, and now I'm seeing, and oh my God, while I'm talking to you, the numbers, it was wild. Now that was an extreme case, and I believe I was being shown everything that I had healed and integrated up to that point, because the Christ Light retreat was like just super powerful, and it was it was kind of like a gift to me for having given so much Christ light to people for so many days, that the universe was like, here, let's show you your reality now. Let's reflect back to you everything you've done in the past 25 years of doing all this healing work. So the universe is talking to us through street signs, through numbers on the clock, through names of museums, through whoever calls you, through phone numbers you see, through the sounds in the air, everything. Okay, that's another crazy example. I'm trying to think of a more pedestrian. Okay, I'll do one more and we'll wrap up with this story for today. I have a thing where there came a point in my journey and on my process where one of the topics I was really working on is like ego and arrogance. And so What started to happen was if I even for a moment, and I'm talking about a second, attached my conscious awareness with an arrogant or egoic thought, I would trip. I'd be walking and I would just trip and fall, or I would stub my toe, or I would slam my elbow into something. And it was so, I mean, I'm talking about for a millisecond, I'd be like, yeah, I'm pretty hot shit. Boom, trip and fall. Or like, man, I'm doing a great job walking the dog right now. Boom, hit my elbow. Now, you might say, why is the universe punishing you for having positive thoughts about yourself? This was not positive thoughts about myself. This was defensive, egoic strategies that were there to keep me from dropping into my vulnerability and the truth of who I really am. So it happened so often that I started to go, I asked consciousness, I said, am I tripping and hitting myself every time I have an arrogant thought? And it was like, yep. And we'll do that for you the rest of your life. So careful. And I was like, that's some for real shit, you guys. And that will keep a lady humble. And it sure has. No matter what status I'm given by people or money I make or people come to class or wisdom I carry or whatever happens, you better believe I am not the center of this universe, and I am quite aware of this fact that I am being operated by a source of light that is much larger than my body mind. So I don't fuck around with its rules. The rules of the universe are the rules of the universe, and I can either operate within them and have some peace and some flow, or operate without them and have a lot of struggle and suffering. And in my case, trips and falls, accidents, car accidents, etc. So everything that happens outside of us, tripping and falling, hitting your elbow, all of it is a reflection of something going on inside. The question is, are you willing to take a subtle enough approach to coming to understand what that is inside of you? Are you willing and able to live with enough curiosity that you can hold those questions rather than judge yourself? And then are you willing to take action on reintegrating the parts of self that need reintegration once you discover what the root cause is of the external reflection? These are good questions, and only you can answer them for yourselves. So, speaking of questions, we have 4 minutes left. Does anybody have anything they'd like to ask on this topic at all? An example of this that you're wondering about, an abstract question you have about it, anything at all, throw it in the chat, and I'm happy to respond. Oftentimes, when I talk like this at length and teach concepts like this, my body gets really hot. So right now I have like ass and thigh sweat happening, just like the heat of awareness. Just it happens during healing class. Every time I have to change my whatever jeans I'm wearing, I always have to change them because my legs and my ass sweat like crazy. Any questions? Throw them in the chat. Now's the time. Don't be shy. Remember that when you ask a question, you open the door for somebody else to get an awareness themselves that they might not be able to get if you weren't asking your question. 3 minutes to go, friends. Who has a question? Throw it in the chat. Hello, hello. I know I move quickly, but you got this. All right, if nobody has a question, we'll wrap up here. It's been a fast one. It's been a deep one. You guys are the best. Thank you for being here. I hope you'll go forward in your day, evening, life, week, wondering with curiosity and no judgment, what is the external reality showing you about what's going on inside of you, and who can help you process or work with whatever that might be. And I, of course, am one of those people who's happy to help you. Join the Friday class if you're curious. Also, one thing, November 26th, which is a Saturday, I'm going to do a 2-hour, very potent healing to bring us into the kind of angelic frequency of the holiday season. The angels are very close to our realm during the holiday season. So November 26th, Saturday, it's just $85, which is like super cheap. It's going to be 2 hours of divine light healing to heal trauma, clear stuff, integrate parts, and activate our alignment with the angelic realm. So it should be really beautiful. If you're curious about that, You can just reserve your spot to that by paying on Venmo to @Katie the Rubin, which I just put in the chat. It's just $85 for 2 hours, which is like very, very cheap. So join us for that. And if you're curious about Friday healing class, just check out Katie Rubin. Oops, that didn't work. KatieRubin.com. Go to the healing tab, scroll down to highest level healing on Fridays and join us for that. Or just email me with any questions you guys might have. Thank you for being here, everybody. I hope you have a great night. Take care. Bye.